Welcome back to another episode of The Football Chemist, where we use data to go through football's biggest talking points without boring or confusing you with all of that technical jargon. On today's episode, we'll take a look at whether Jacob Murphy is good enough to be in England's squad. The 30-year-old winger has emerged as a surprise star for Newcastle this season and has chipped in with crucial goals and assists as they look to wrap up one of their most successful seasons in recent memory. But what makes Murphy so good, and should Thomas Tuchel gamble on him just over a year ahead of the 2026 World Cup? Let's find out. So first things first, who is Jacob Murphy and what's his background before this prolific season for Newcastle? Jacob Murphy is a 30-year-old right winger who plays for Newcastle United. He came through Norwich's academy, who sent him out on loan 6 times before they finally sold him to Newcastle in 2017. Newcastle loaned him out 2 further times before he settled in the squad for good in 2020. This shows that he is really quite the journeyman, and when we look at a map at the different clubs that he's played for, you can see he really has covered all of England and he has played in several different leagues. He's not doing quite well on the southwest coast though, so maybe he doesn't like cider or something. As for his style of play, he's a more traditional right winger who likes to stay out wide and put crosses into the box, rather than your more modern inverted winger who likes to cut inside onto their more favoured foot and go for the shots and more direct play. This has led to him not yet scoring a Premier League goal with his left foot this season and being very right foot heavy, and this is kind of shown in the way that he bags your more poacher goals rather than the world-class goals you might see by an inverted winger cutting in and cutting it on the far corner. He's the kind of player who likes to get on the ball at the far post and tap in the chances. They're easy chances, but someone needs to put them away and all goals count the same. But let's not forget that he is also very good with his assists and he has been exemplary this season. In fact, he's the second highest assist maker this season, only behind Mo Salah, and he is leading some top players in this metric, including some of his rivals for that right wing position in England's squad. So it's a well-recognised fact that he has been very good for Newcastle this season, almost a surprise contender given some of the players in their squad. Why exactly has he been so good? Why has he been able to flourish at Newcastle? Well, I guess the easy answer to this question is that he has been feeding a top-class striker like Alexander Isak. He's managed to get plenty of assists because Isak is a clinical striker who puts away chances. 7 of his 11 Premier League assists this season have been to Isak. And when we take a closer look at his goal-creating actions, which is up there with one of the best in the Premier League, he's in the 99th percentile for goal-creating actions from live ball passes. This means that he's creating goals in the traditional way rather than through his dribbles or through drawing fouls or more modern ways as the game has evolved over the last couple of decades. And as I mentioned before, he is a clinical poacher, and we can see this more clearly when we take a look at this graphic here. So this graphic basically shows how Murphy has scored this season. The larger the circle, the higher the XG, and here in green we've got all 8 of his goals so far. As you can see, they're more or less all on the right-hand side and all in the penalty area. He's not going to score you those long shots, but he does get goals from being in good positions. A lot of these goals in the 6-yard box are from someone on the left flank pulling the ball across, playing it into Murphy's feet after the keeper's beaten, and he's just right place, right time, and puts the chance away. And this is shown further when we consider that 3 of his 8 goals were assisted by either Anthony Gordon at left wing or Valentino Livramento at left back. And then 3 more of his 8 goals didn't have an assister because they're him pouncing on a rebound or pouncing on a tap-in after a goalkeeper save. This shows that he is very keyed up and very naturally clinical in pouncing on chances rather than relying on someone else to create them. He's just got that attacker's instinct, which is so valuable. So let's take a bit of a deeper look into his style of play, and we can see this more when we take a look at his polygon. So as I mentioned before, he's a very good assister, and this number is backed up even more when we take a look at his expected assisted goals, where he's in the 94th percentile for this. But let's not ignore the other stats that he's strong at. His blocks and interceptions are also very strong, especially his blocks. Again, this is crucial for a forward, because if you're strong at this, you're winning the ball high up the pitch, turning over the ball when the defence is a bit out of shape, and this is how clubs can create chances, especially bigger clubs who can struggle to break down stubborn defences it's important to win the ball high up the pitch and catch the defence napping a bit. But all in all, this polygon does just show that he is a very traditional right winger. And when we take a closer look at some of his key stats, we can see more his strengths and weaknesses a bit more specifically. So when we look at his 5 best statistics, we can see that his raw numbers, which tend to be the best, his assists and his goals and assists and his crosses, these are numbers which he can directly translate into chances, into goals and into points at the end of the day. But when we look at his worst statistics, they're more of the indirect statistics or the more underlying numbers, which can be a bit of an indicator on whether a player is actually good or is getting lucky. It can also be an indicator on build-up play a bit further back rather than the more direct final touches that you might see. For example, his carries into the final third, his pass completion, his progressive passes, these don't necessarily create direct chances, but they can lead to direct chances further down the line. So these are valuable stats to do well in. It's not the end of the world if you're not doing too well in them. All this backs up is that he is a traditional winger, as I've mentioned before. And when we take a closer look at the raw numbers, and I want to especially highlight the crosses, we can see how he could fit in that England squad. If you've got Kane up front, which is England's most likely number 9, a player like Murphy crossing into a traditional striker like Kane could cause some serious damage for any opposition. Furthermore, Murphy has got a more selfless style of play where he's more of a passer rather than a dribbler. And given that England's squad is overflowing with top-class talent, top-class dribblers, it might be quite good to have a selfless player in the mix who gives you a bit of a different angle and does a bit of the grunt work that some of the other players might not do as much. So how does all of this about his style of play mean that he will help England? Let's take a closer look. So Murphy's style of play as a more genuine winger is more evident when we look at his heat map. As you can see here, he hogs the touchline on the right-hand side. Saka, you'll see having stronger heats inside the penalty area or in that kind of half space, whereas Murphy sticks to the flank because that's where he can put the crosses in. And this is why he'd work very well in an England squad alongside Saka, because let's say Saka starts, which is a near certainty, unless Tuchel wants to play him at left back and a 5 at the back, which I have explored in a previous video. But anyway, when we come back to looking at Murphy as the replacement right winger for Saka, let's say he comes on at the 60, 70 minute mark, he'll offer this different angle of attack, which could be very crucial if they want to change things up, break down a stubborn defence, and just give them something new to think about, basically. But of course, Murphy's not the only option that Thomas Tuchel has at right wing, and he has tried a few different options, especially back in March during the qualifiers, where he tried a few different players. So let's compare Murphy with the other players who are in and around that England squad for that right wing spot. So first, let's take a look at their chance creation. And here you can see Murphy compared to Saka, Foden, Eze and Bowen. First things first, Saka is leading all 3 metrics here. That's expected. He is England's number 1 right winger. I'm not going to dispute that. But when we look at the backup options, Murphy is actually second so far this season. All of these have been adjusted per 90. So the amount that these players has played is not really going to affect the numbers too much. But as you can see here, very high for goals and assists. This is backed up when you look at the expected numbers. So this shows that it's not a fluke. He genuinely is good at creating chances. And this is further shown by his goal creating actions, which is above the other 3 wingers that he will be rivaling for this spot. And so if we take a bit of a step back from direct chance creation and look at his ball carrying abilities to get into those positions to create chances, we can see he also stacks up quite well here. Again, Saka is leading all 3, but Murphy is second in progressive passes received and quite a way clear of the others. This shows that he gets into good positions to receive the ball in good positions and he feeds off good passes, and England are full of good passes in their team. Even when we look at his ball carrying abilities and his progressive carries and carries into the penalty area, I mentioned before that he's a bit so-so on the ball. He's more of a passer, but he's still performing all right in this. Eze appears to be the leader out of the 4, but Murphy is definitely second. So far we can see he's definitely outstripping Foden and Bowen. Let's bear in mind though that Bowen has had some injury problems this season, so he's been a bit up and down, and Foden is having a bit of an off season. However, the other thing to point out with these 2 players is that they also play in the middle, and so Murphy, a genuine right winger, might be a better option than someone who could be a 10, could be a winger, could be a false 9. But unfortunately for Murphy, whilst he is a good crosser, his passing game does leave a bit to be desired. As we can see here, he is actually trailing his rivals for progressive passes and key passes. He's last out of the 5 of them. And this is where, especially Foden, you can see him coming to the fore. And so he's not the best passer. And interestingly, the last 2 sets of graphs we looked at, he was second behind Saka. Whereas here you've got players who are almost better than Saka. Look at Foden, he's better than Saka at progressive passes. And so if England do want to go for that different angle of attack from the bench, is Murphy too similar? I think this is a bit stretching it because as we've seen, Saka and Murphy are very different styles of play. And Murphy is still making up for it with his passes and crosses into the penalty area, which shows he is creating direct chances. He's more suffering on the indirect chances a bit further back in the build-up. So as you can see here, he stacks up quite well against the right-wing rivals, and there's definitely food for thought for Thomas Tuchel. But the question is, should Thomas Tuchel gamble on Jacob Murphy? For me, the big thing that will hold Murphy back is his age. As mentioned before, he's 30, and so he's definitely beyond the peak of his career. He's not going to really be getting any better at this age, and so Tuchel might be looking to build for a younger player. If the World Cup was this year, it'd be more tempting to take a gamble, but because it's over 13, 14 months away, Tuchel's got time to tinker with his squad and experiment a bit more. Furthermore, there's little evidence that this form is sustainable. This is his first properly good season where he's been in contention for the England squad. And whilst he was quite good last season, his overall numbers during his career have not been that spectacular. And when we take a look at his career goals and assists per 90, you can see that it's been very so-so, especially since he started playing full-time in the Premier League in the 2021 season. It took him a few years to get up and going, and it's only been the last 2 years really where he's been putting in numbers that are worthy of someone being in the England squad. Therefore, I think it'll be Tuchel's best option to wait a bit on Murphy. He's still got time, he's still got a few more international breaks to take a look at his squad, but for now I think he should hold back and assess whether Murphy's just a flash in the pan or genuinely can make a difference in England's squad in the upcoming World Cup. If Murphy continues his strong form going into the next season, by all means Tuchel can take a gamble in that September international break, bring him into the squad, see how he interacts with other players, but for now I'll just hold off a bit. But what do you think? Has Murphy's form so far this season earned him a place in the England squad? Do you think Tuchel should stick to his guns with his other right-wing options? Let me know what you think in the comments below and give this video a like if you like what you've seen. Also, feel free to subscribe if you want to see more content like this. The subscriptions really help with the channel's growth. And give us a follow on Instagram and TikTok if you want to see more short form content and behind the scenes stuff. I'll see you next time.